Welcome back to the deep dive. Okay, get ready, because if you thought you had a handle on what consciousness is, well, prepare to have some fundamental assumptions seriously shaken up today.
Oh, absolutely. We've got this incredible stack of source material you shared with us, and it takes us on a wild ride. We're talking from the blazing heart of the sun all the way down to the weirdest quantum secrets.
Yeah, and our mission as we see it is to try and decode what we're calling the cosmic code.
This isn't just a deep dive. It feels more like we're getting slingshotted into some of the most radical, really boundary-pushing theories in physics and philosophy right now.
And it all revolves around this one central idea, this honestly shocking premise that just flies in the face of standard textbooks.
What if the sun is conscious?
Right, that's the hook. I mean, we're talking about this giant ball of fire, 93 million miles away. It's violent, it's turbulent, and we're suggesting it might have a mind.
It forces us completely out of that comfortable zone of conventional biology, where consciousness lives neatly tucked away in gray matter.
Today, we're diving headfirst into what feels like suppressed knowledge, mathematical puzzles, really radical ideas that could change how we see everything, from the tiniest particle right up to the biggest star in our neighborhood.
And here's the promise we want to make to you listening. By the time we're done here, we're going to show you how the very mechanism that might allow the sun to think, well, it could also offer a real, tangible scientific basis for a universal consciousness.
Or maybe even a divine creator. It's the whole spectrum, physics, math, theology, all potentially tangled up in this one cosmic code.
Okay, let's tackle that main provocation head on. This is the one that it broke our brains when we were researching.
Yeah, it's a big one.
According to a specific mathematical framework being explored right now, the brightest thing in our sky, the sun.
Our sun, yeah.
The source of all energy, all life on Earth, the sun, might be conscious.
Oh, okay.
Not like metaphorically conscious.
Yeah.
Not like poetry.
You mean actually processing information, having some kind of awareness?
That's the idea being floated, scientifically, mathematically.
Okay, hold on. If the sun is thinking, even in a basic way, what does that even mean? What's the quantum code behind that?
What equations link its massive scale, all that plasma, down to tiny subatomic particles?
That's the real mystery.
That's the ultimate hook. And that's what we're diving into today, so stick around. You need to hear this.
We're going to unpack this quantum secret, the thing that somehow connects tiny particles, swirling smoke, planetary orbits.
And yeah, even the human search for the divine, we're pulling together stuff from cutting-edge quantum physics.
And even some really brave Soviet-era thinkers who risked everything.
This is the secret code of the cosmos. And honestly, by the end of this, you're probably going to see the universe completely differently.
Let's do it.
Okay. Part 1. The unthinkable truth. Let's set the stage and drop that first nuke, so to speak.
Right. The taboo question.
Exactly, the taboo question. For decades, the standard story about consciousness, especially from neuroscience, has been really narrow.
Super narrow. It's always consciousness equals brain. You need neurons, synapses firing, complex biology. The wetware.
Yeah, it's just this thing that pops up, an epiphenomenon when biology gets complicated enough.
A byproduct. An accident almost.
But what if that's just looking under the wrong lamppost? What if that's the biological trap?
And that's the challenge coming from physics, right? Saying, wait a minute, maybe consciousness isn't just for brains.
Maybe it's fundamental, like gravity or electromagnetism, just there.
Which forces you right back to that shocking claim. Is the sun conscious?
And we got to be clear, like you said, when we say conscious here, we don't mean the sun is composing symphonies or worrying about its taxes.
No, definitely not self-aware like a person. More like, does it possess an inherent ability to process information, to have its future state influenced by its past?
Does it behave in patterns that suggest some kind of collective memory? That's the angle.
Okay, so where does that idea even come from? It sounds pretty out there.
Well, the sources point back to a theory that, while maybe on the fringes now, kind of paved the way. Rupert Sheldrake's concept of morphic resonance.
Ah, Sheldrake, right. Morphic fields.
Can you give us the quick and simple version of morphic resonance without losing the core idea?
Sure. So Sheldrake proposed that all self-organizing systems, think crystals, plants, animals, maybe even stars, are shaped by invisible organizing fields. He called them morphic fields.
Okay, invisible fields.
The key thing is these fields supposedly carry information from similar systems in the past. It's like a collective memory for nature, but non-local. So when a new system forms, say, a crystal starts growing,
it tunes into the morphic field of all the crystals like it that formed before. It inherits the pattern, the how-to guide.
Sheldrake called it formative causation. It's like patterns get transmitted across space and time, but not through any physical means we currently measure.
Think of it less like spooky habits and more like, well, like the universe has this enormous shared non-local database, a sort of how-to guide for organizing things.
Okay, now let's try applying that to the sun. We see these massive, complex events happening all the time. Sunspots, solar flares, huge eruptions.
Coronal mass ejections, yeah.
And they aren't just random splurges of energy. They follow cycles, they repeat, they have structure, and they've maintained this incredible integrity for billions of years.
So the argument here, based on morphic resonance, is that this consistent, complex repetition, it implies a constant processing of information. The sun is basically following and reinforcing its own morphic habits, is maintaining its form and function through this inherited pattern.
It's not sitting there writing philosophy, obviously.
No. It's deeply involved in self-regulation. If this idea holds, the sun's consciousness would be about managing its immense energy, its magnetic fields, its plasma flows, all to stay in balance, to basically keep being the sun.
It's processing pure stellar physics, 100%.
And the sheer complexity needed just for the sun to exist and function as it does. Well, according to this view, that level of complex self-organization demands some kind of fundamental non-biological information processing, a form of consciousness.
And that's the real conscious sun hook, isn't it? If the star that basically runs our entire solar system is processing information, even if it's a very basic operational kind of consciousness.
The implications are just staggering. It means we aren't necessarily the only thinking things around here. We could be part of this vast, interconnected, maybe even self-aware cosmic ecosystem.
Yeah, and the key thing for you, our listener, to take away here is that this framework lets us step outside the usual biological box when thinking about consciousness.
It hints at this huge, intelligent universe just waiting for us to figure out its code.
Going back to morphic resonance, though, is there any evidence for that? Or is it just a cool idea?
Well, Sheldrake pointed to things like crystallization. Apparently, when a new chemical compound is crystallized for the first time, it can be really tricky, take ages.
Right.
But once it's been done successfully somewhere, it suddenly becomes much easier to crystallize that same compound in labs all over the world, even if they're totally disconnected.
So the first one creates the memory, the field.
That was Sheldrake's argument. The first successful crystallization sets up the morphic field, and later attempts resonate with that pattern, making it easier. They remember how to do it.
Okay, so if you take that idea and apply it to the sun, which is this huge complex system with all these repeating cycles and patterns.
Exactly. Solar flares, sunspot cycles, the plasma dynamics, they repeat with incredible regularity over vast timescales, but there's chaos in there too.
So, Sheldrake suggested the sun must have a deep pattern-based memory, a kind of consciousness rooted in that repeatable yet complex behavior. It's not just reacting passively. It's operating based on these inherited information patterns.
Okay, that's the critical link then. If this giant star is operating based on past patterns, if it's thinking, in this Sheldrake sense, what's the actual physical ingredient that allows this?
We need the physics. What makes this universal information processing possible at the smallest level?
Yeah, moving from these big patterns down to the nitty-gritty.
And that brings us to the quantum secret. This is where the current physics conversation gets really wild.
This is the radical hypothesis.
Totally. The idea is consciousness isn't just a biological bonus feature. It's fundamental. It was always here. And it's tied directly to the tiniest building blocks of reality.
Wow. Okay, so the universe isn't a machine that accidentally grew a thinking part. The universe is thinking all the way down.
That's the implication.
But what's the ingredient? What allows for this universal awareness?
The hidden ingredient, according to the physicists we're looking at, is quantum spin.
Spin. Okay, I've heard of that. But it's always confusing. It's not actually spinning, right?
Right, exactly. It's not like a tiny spinning top. It's an intrinsic property, like charge or mass. Think of it as a fundamental built-in angular momentum, almost like an internal compass needle.
A compass needle, okay. And it's quantized.
Yeah. It can only point in specific directions, usually represented as spin up or spin down, discrete values.
So this tiny directional property.
Yeah.
That's the key to cosmic consciousness. How?
Well, physicists like Hoping Hu and Mox and Wu propose that consciousness is mediated by this quantum spin. It emerges from the incredibly complex interactions, and this is crucial, the entanglement of these spins.
Entanglement. The spooky action at a distance.
That's the one, where two particles become linked and measuring one instantly affects the other no matter how far apart they are.
So these tiny compass needles are linked up across the universe, and that's consciousness.
In their model, yes. The constant interaction and information sharing through this vast, entangled network of spins is what constitutes awareness at a fundamental level. Entanglement provides the non-local connection needed for information to be processed globally, not just locally.
So it's the connections and the information flow through spin.
Precisely. They argue that if a system of spins, whether it's the particles in your brain or the plasma in the sun, reaches a certain level of complex, coherent entanglement.
Coherent meaning?
Meaning the information is being processed in a unified global way, not just randomly. If it hits that threshold of complexity and coherence, that's what they define as consciousness, or at least a precursor to it.
Okay, but how do they, test that? Make it actual science?
They're trying to define the math. What are the metrics? Things like the coherence time of the spin network, the complexity of the entanglement patterns. Can we quantify this awareness?
Right. And this is where it gets really wild, because they're saying this abstract quantum spin stuff. It connects to the world we actually see.
Exactly. That's the mathematical bridge. Researchers Meng and Yang found potential mathematical links between the equations describing these quantum spin dynamics,
which Hu and Wu link to consciousness,
and the equations that govern everyday physical flows, specifically the Navier-Stokes equations.
Navier-Stokes? Okay, I've heard whispers about those. Aren't they, infamously hard?
Oh, incredibly hard.
Yeah.
They describe fluid flow, water, air, plasma, but they're non-linear, which makes modeling turbulence, that chaotic swirling motion, a nightmare. It's actually one of the $1 million Millennium Prize math problems.
$1 million if you can crack them.
Basically, yeah. Prove certain things about their solutions.
So why is linking quantum spin consciousness to those equations such a big deal?
Because that is the secret code. If the math for fundamental awareness, spin dynamics, translates into the math for observable reality, fluid dynamics.
And consciousness isn't some separate spooky thing. It's woven into the fabric of physical reality.
Yeah, exactly. It means we might finally be able to model consciousness using the same mathematical language that describes smoke rising or water flowing. Awareness is part of the universe's physical dynamics.
Wow. Okay. That's a lot to take in already.
We're just getting started.
All right, part 2. Decoding the universal mind. Let's dig into this Hu and Wu model properly. If consciousness is spin, what does that look like?
Well, they talk about a universal consciousness field, or UCF. Imagine the whole cosmos is soaked in this field. Every particle, everywhere is part of it.
Like an ocean of potential awareness.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
And all the spins within this field are constantly interacting, constantly exchanging information, especially through entanglement.
Can you give us another way to picture that cosmic network?
Okay, think of millions and millions of tiny compass needles, right? All connected by invisible threads. That's entanglement.
Okay.
If you wiggle one needle, instantly others linked to it respond no matter how far away. Now imagine that happening constantly on a cosmic scale with trillions upon trillions of needles.
So the collective wiggling and responding is the consciousness field processing information.
That's the core idea. It's this constant non-local information sharing via spin interactions. Mm-hmm. And because spin is fundamental to all matter, this field permeates everything.
Everything. Which loops us right back to our big fiery friend. Why the sun is conscious, according to this.
Right. The sun isn't just made of particles with spin. It's this gigantic churning cauldron of interaction. You've got insane magnetic fields, turbulent plasma moving at incredible speeds, constant nuclear fusion.
It's a hotbed of activity.
Exactly. So if the Hu-Wu hypothesis holds, the sun is basically a massive, highly complex, and probably quite coherent network of interacting spins. It has to be participating in this UCF in a significant way.
But, okay, if this field is everywhere, why aren't rocks composing poetry? How is the sun's consciousness different from mine or yours?
That's the crucial point the sources make. It's about the grade or level of consciousness. The sun's awareness, if it exists in this model, is likely much, much simpler than human consciousness.
Simply how?
It might be processing vast amounts of information about its own internal state, energy flows, magnetic fields, maintaining stability, its patterns like Sheldrake suggested, but probably without any self-reflection, ego, or abstract thought.
So it's not about having consciousness, but about the complexity of the structure using it. The human brain is just a really fancy antenna for this field.
That's a great way to put it. The brain might be the most complex structure we know of for tapping into and processing information from the UCF, allowing for higher level stuff like subjective experience and planning.
Whereas the sun is using the same field, but maybe for more fundamental system-level self-regulation, like maintaining its own existence.
Possibly, yeah. A simpler, more foundational form of awareness tied to its physical being and its role in the cosmos, its own kind of morphic resonance, but explained through quantum spin.
Okay, that distinction is important. Now let's get back to the math that ties the brain, the sun, and the quantum vacuum together, the Navier-Stokes key.
Right, the link between spin dynamics and the Navier-Stokes equations.
Yeah. We need to unpack Navier-Stokes a bit more because they sound key. You said they describe fluid flow.
Yep. How fluids like water, air, or plasma move. They connect a fluid's acceleration to the forces acting on it, pressure, internal friction, or viscosity. Think water in a pipe, air over a wing, smoke from a candle.
Sounds straightforward enough. But you said their million-dollar problem hard.
Because of turbulence. When flow gets chaotic and unpredictable, like eddies in a river or gusts of wind, the nonlinear terms in the equations make them incredibly difficult to solve or even fully understand mathematically. We can simulate them with computers, but a complete analytical solution. Still elusive.
They describe chaos, basically.
Predictable chaos, in theory. If you knew the exact starting conditions, the equations should predict the future. But tiny uncertainties blow up because of the nonlinearity.
So if the math of quantum awareness, spin, links to the math of fluid chaos, Navier-Stokes,
right,
what does that say about consciousness?
It suggests that the complex, dynamic, sometimes chaotic seeming nature of consciousness, the way thoughts flow, emotions shift, awareness flickers, might actually be mathematically analogous to turbulence in some kind of cosmic fluid.
Whoa. So the flow of consciousness isn't just a metaphor. It could be literal, mathematical.
That's the mind-bending implication. It puts consciousness on a physical footing, described by the same kind of math that governs very real, observable phenomena.
Okay, wait. If consciousness math is fluid math, does that mean the universe itself behaves like a fluid?
That leads directly to the superfluid universe concept. Some models explore this, yeah.
Superfluid, like zero friction fluid.
Exactly. Helium cooled way down becomes a superfluid, flows without any resistance. It's a quantum state of matter. And some physicists propose modeling the cosmos, or parts of it like the solar system, using the physics of superfluidity.
How does that relate to planets? How does zero friction fluid explain why Mars is where it is?
This is wild. In these superfluid models, particularly using something called the two-fluid theory, the stable positions of planets aren't just random gravitational captures. They correspond to quantized vortices within this cosmic superfluid.
Like quantized vortices, like tiny perfect whirlpools.
Exactly, like the discrete energy levels in an atom, but for orbital distances. The planets get stuck in these stable, ordered vortex patterns within the superfluid medium. Their orbits are dictated by the fluid dynamics of this cosmic substrate.
Hold on, so my orbit around the sun isn't just gravity pulling me, it's part of a giant cosmic whirlpool.
Yeah, a pattern possibly governed by the same underlying physics that Hu and Wu connect to universal consciousness via spin.
That's absolutely insane. The order of the solar system might be an expression of conscious dynamics.
The stability of everything we know might be written in the math of quantum consciousness manifesting as cosmic fluid flow. It connects the chaos of turbulence and the order of the cosmos.
Okay, seriously, if your mind isn't blown yet, I don't know what to tell you. The idea that the math for smoke and rivers could be the secret code for universal consciousness is just wow.
Reframes everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And look, if you're digging this deep dive, if your brain is happily swirling in a non-linear quantum vortex right now, and you want us to keep pulling these threads, please do us a solid. Like and subscribe. Seriously, hit those buttons.
Yeah, and check out the memberships if you want to support more deep dives like this, because we are only halfway decoded here.
That's right. This was the physics. But the next part, we connect this universal consciousness directly to the idea of a divine creator.
Trust us, you really don't want to miss how physicists, sometimes under incredible pressure, found hints of God hidden in this very framework. Stay with us.
Okay, part 3, the ultimate source. From quantum mechanics to the divine.
We've got this framework now. A universal consciousness field driven by spin, described by fluid dynamics math. But the question becomes inevitable, right?
Where did the field come from? What's the source?
Exactly. And that's where science bumps right up against philosophy theology.
Yeah.
The question of God as the ultimate source of it all.
And this isn't just idle speculation. You have Figures like Robert Lanza and his theory of biocentrism. He's a serious scientist, right? Stem cells, regenerative medicine.
Oh, yeah, very prominent. Which gives his, let's say, more philosophical ideas some extra weight.
So what's the gist of biocentrism?
Lanza flips the script entirely. He argues that life and consciousness are fundamental. They don't arise from matter. Matter arises from them.
Wait, consciousness creates reality, not the other way around.
That's the core claim. He leans heavily on quantum mechanics, especially the observer effect. You know, the double-slit experiment where particles are waves until you look, then they become particles.
Right, the act of observing changes the outcome.
Lanza takes that to the extreme. He says all properties of reality, space, time, matter itself only exist relative to the observer, to consciousness. Without a conscious observer, there's no out there.
So the universe needs us, or some observer, to even be a universe.
That's the biocentric view. It makes the observer primary. And if that's true, then the idea of a universal fundamental consciousness underlying everything isn't just plausible.
It's almost necessary. You need a primary observer for reality to exist.
Exactly. In his framework, the concept of a divine mind, a supreme consciousness, becomes the logical candidate for that foundational observer. God isn't intervening in physics. God is the consciousness that makes physics possible.
Wow, okay. That's a heavy implication from the observer effect.
Yeah.
Now, let's shift gears slightly, but stay on this theme. The defiant Soviet scientists.
Ah, yeah. Talk about high stakes. These were brilliant minds working under a regime that actively suppressed religion, pushing state-sponsored atheism.
Materialism was the only acceptable philosophy.
Absolutely, yet some of them, based on their own scientific work, came to believe in something more, risking their careers maybe worse.
Like V. Vennick, a thermal physicist.
Yeah, apparently a very sharp guy, and he wrote a book, incredibly brave at the time, called Why I Believe in God.
What was his scientific argument, coming from thermodynamics?
He looked at the sheer improbability of it all. The incredible order and complexity in the universe, especially the origin of life, seemed impossible to explain just through the random processes allowed by the laws of physics and thermodynamics he studied.
Entropy should lead to disorder, right?
Yeah.
But we see increasing complexity.
Right. For Vennick, the existence of such profound, persistent order, the fine-tuning of the universe, it strongly suggested an intelligent, organizing principle behind it all, a divine creator. He felt scientific materialism just couldn't account for the data.
Using physics to argue for God against the state ideology, that's powerful. And then there's Pavel Florensky. Even more dramatic story.
Totally. Florensky was a genius polymath physicist, mathematician, engineer, philosopher, and then he became an Orthodox priest and theologian.
Wow. He bridged those worlds.
Completely. He tragically died in a Soviet gulag, but his intellectual legacy is huge. He didn't see science and religion as enemies.
How did he see them?
As complementary paths to the same ultimate reality. Science uses reason and experiments to understand the how, the material structure. Theology uses faith, intuition, revelation to understand the why, the spiritual structure, the divine wisdom that organized it all.
Two sides of the same coin.
Exactly. For him, they were both ways of apprehending the deep truth encoded in existence. It's humbling, isn't it? These minds, under threat, finding divinity in the very equations they mastered.
Absolutely. Let's dig into Florensky's ideas a bit more. This divine wisdom encoded in reality.
Yeah, he wasn't just saying God exists. He was trying to show how the structure of reality itself points towards that divine wisdom, that organizing principle.
And one famous way he, or thinkers inspired by him like Pascal, illustrated this was the hole in the heart idea, the universal longing.
Right. It's that deep, fundamental human yearning for something more, something beyond the material world, a desire that worldly success, pleasure, knowledge, none of it seems to completely fill.
The hole that's never quite satisfied by material things.
Exactly. And Florensky, being a mathematician, apparently used a mathematical analogy to visualize why materialism is inherently limited.
How do you graph a spiritual longing?
Okay, picture a simple parabola, like an upside-down U shape. Let the horizontal axis, x-axis, be all your worldly efforts, career, money, relationships, learning, whatever.
Okay.
And the vertical axis, y-axis, is the fulfillment you get from those things. As you put in more effort, move along the x-axis, your fulfillment Y goes up, but only to a certain peak point, the top of the curve.
The maximum worldly happiness you can achieve.
Right. You can reach the absolute summit of human achievement, the highest point on that parabola. But you're still on the parabola. You've only reached a finite maximum level of fulfillment set by.
There's still empty space above it.
That's the hole in the heart. It's the gap between the absolute best fulfillment the material world can offer, the peak of the curve, and that infinite longing for true transcendence. The math shows that the ultimate source of fulfillment must lie outside the boundaries of this worldly function.
The answer isn't on the graph.
The answer, God, divine wisdom, ultimate source, has to be external to the system defined by purely material pursuits. It's a clever way to use mathematical limits to suggest the necessity of something beyond the math itself.
That is clever. Using the limits of the model to point beyond the model. Okay, and Florensky also connected this divine ordering to our sense of beauty.
Yes. He argued that our innate human ability to perceive and be deeply moved by beauty, especially the complex ordered beauty we find in nature and mathematics and art, isn't just random preference.
It's a clue.
It's a sign. He suggested it's a reflection of the divine wisdom, the logos, that structured the universe in the first place. We recognize the beauty because our own consciousness resonates with the mind that created it.
And the perfect example of this kind of ordered, complex beauty is fractals, right?
Absolutely. Fractals are the ultimate mathematical art form. Think of a coastline, a fern, a snowflake. They show self-similarity.
Meaning the pattern repeats itself no matter how closely you zoom in.
Exactly. Infinite detail emerging from often very simple repeating rules, like the clock snowflake or the Mandelbrot, set endless complexity from a basic formula.
So how does appreciating a fractal connect us to God for Florensky?
He suggested that our ability to perceive this infinite recursive beauty isn't just pattern recognition, it's evidence of a shared consciousness. We can appreciate the intricate, infinite order because our minds are somehow connected to or reflections of the divine mind that thought that order into existence.
So seeing the beauty in a fractal is like tuning into the frequency of the creator.
That's the essence of it. The structure of reality itself is encoded with this divine signature of infinite ordered beauty, and our awareness of it is our link to that universal consciousness field sourced in the divine. It ties the math, the physics, the spin, the beauty all together.
Wow. So next time you look at a tree branch, you're seeing the artist's signature.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah, final conclusion. Let's try and wrap this cosmic code up.
We've covered a lot of ground. From the, let's say, startling idea of a conscious sun.
Yeah, startling is one word for it.
Through the quantum mechanics of spin as the mediator of a universal consciousness field.
Linked mathematically to the equations of turbulence and fluid flow, the Navier-Stokes equations.
Which might even explain the ordered structure of planetary orbits through concepts like superfluid vortices.
And then connecting all that scientific modeling back to the big questions, the philosophical quest for an ultimate source, potentially the divine creator.
It's quite a journey.
And the synthesis seems to be that the deeper science pushes into understanding consciousness, the more it seems to bump up against these fundamental, almost metaphysical questions about reality's origin.
It does feel like the path is leading back towards a more integrated view, doesn't it? The hidden knowledge, if you want to call it that, woven through all these sources, Hu and Wu's spin field, Lanza's observer-created reality, Venick's argument from order, Florensky's divine wisdom.
They all seem to point towards the possibility that the divine creator may be the ultimate source of consciousness that underpins everything.
That seems to be the profound implication emerging.
So the new paradigm isn't a dead clockwork universe that accidentally sparked thought. It's something else entirely.
It suggests the foundation of reality isn't lifeless matter, but an infinite, interconnected, fundamentally conscious intelligence.
Everything, particles, stars, rivers, us, is an expression of this universal awareness.
The conscious sun, the math of spin, it all hints that the very fabric of reality is alive with information, with awareness.
Which leaves us with the final thought for you, listening right now. If the world around you, right down to the atoms, is part of this infinite conscious intelligence, and if your own awareness is like an antenna tuning into that cosmic field,
how does that change how you see everything? How you interact with the world, knowing you're not separate from it, but a part of this vast thinking cosmos?
How does it change how you live, knowing you're embedded in the ultimate code? That's something to ponder. Go explore that consciousness. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.